Hi there. In my last video I showed you how you can cancel remaining bets once the first of your bets is taken. And to demonstrate that I used a lay the field rule, which essentially put a lay across the field at odds of 2. And then another rule that essentially monitored the market, waiting for the first of those lays to be taken, at which point everything else was cancelled. You can do the same thing effectively, but in an opposite way. The first two, we placed the bets and monitored the market. The other way of doing it is essentially monitoring the market and placing just the one bet, i.e. the bet on the first runner that hits the odds required. So let me set up a rule that does just that, keeping in mind that the rules I'm going to set up here can't be used in conjunction with the ones we've already done. So let's just add in a new rule. And this is going to be lay first runner to hit odds of 2. And again, this is going to be in play, so we'll just set that as a start time. The action is going to be place a lay, so that'll be place a bet. We need to set this up so that we use the all function, so remember to click on apply to all at the bottom left hand corner. It's going to be a lay bet, it's going to be odds of 2, fixed amount of whatever you want, and lay stake is a liability. Again, you might want to set this to keep if you're going to trigger this prior to the start of the race, but there's no real need in this particular instance because the bet won't be entered, won't be submitted until those odds are hit. So in this particular case, bet persistence isn't really required. We need to do the conditions, of course. So the conditions are that the selection fix odds for all of the runners. We need to monitor all of the runners. It's best back odds. Let's say hit 2. So that should be less than or equal to 2. So as soon as it drops below 2, we're going to place a lay bet. So as soon as that condition is true, this lay will be submitted. However, if we left the conditions as they are, if another runner comes along and hits 2, a lay bet will be placed on that runner as well. So what we want to do is to set up a mechanism to monitor the number of bets, just like we did in these rules here. So in this case, what we want to do is look at the market bet count, and the market bet count for any lays. We'll monitor both unmatched and fully matched. That needs to be equal to 0. So in other words, as long as there's no bets in the market, these conditions will be true and the lay will be placed on that runner. As soon as that lay is placed, if another runner comes along and hits odds of 2, because that statement there will no longer be true, the lay bet won't be placed. There will be a situation where if 2 runners are neck and neck and they hit odds of 2 very quickly and close together, Fairbot may not necessarily have time to distinguish between the 2, and so both those lays will go in. But that should be a relatively rare occurrence. And that's it. You don't need an additional rule to do that. So I'm going to set this off on the next race, but keep in mind these things can't run together. So if I just switch those off just now, disable them, save the strategy, and I'll just assign it to this next race, which is happening in a couple of minutes. And given that it's a 2.5 mile, 2 mile 5 furlong race, I'll come back in nearer the time. Okay, we're approaching the business end of the market now, and as you can see, there's no bets being placed as yet because we haven't hit 2. So as soon as one of these hits 2, that should trigger a bet on there, and because that bet is then submitted, that should prevent any other lays being entered into the market. So essentially we're doing much the same as I did in the previous video, we're just approaching it in a different way. And so it's really just a case of you deciding which one you prefer. But they both essentially use the same technique. They monitor the market for the existence of bets that have been placed previously. Now keep in mind, in both situations, irrespective of which way you go about doing it, you can get a situation if it's a very close race and a couple of runners hit the target odds one after the other in quick succession. Fairbot may not necessarily have time to distinguish between the two, so you may end up getting two bets in the market, or at least one bet and a partial one. It's very difficult to avoid that scenario, to be honest. But as I say, that's relatively rare. Okay, we've got a couple of runners here approaching 2 now. Looks like it's only fools. There's that going in on only fools. That's it being taken. Now, of course, I've just placed a straight lay. You might want to do a lay to back or whatever you may want to do, but for the demonstration purposes, that's it. And because if I switch to the automation tab again, let me just move this across a little bit. If I scroll down, you'll see that all these, if they were to come in, there's already a bet being placed. So these will never be equal to 0. So none of these other runners can have a lay placed on it. Okay, so that's another way of achieving the same ends. And it's really up to yourself which one you prefer. Cheers, guys.